Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Open. Today's section, I want to quickly run with you an overview of the skeletal system. I want to explain some important bits, for you, so that you really get oriented as far as the study of skeletal system is concerned. I believe in commencing with this topic for the reason that I'm aware that if you look at the framework of mammals, and for that matter human beings, yes, it is mainly coming from, of course, the skeletal system. And so that is why I want to treat this topic once I'm done with, of course, the kind of orientation that I've given you regarding the study of human anatomy. I am pretty sure that those videos were useful for you. And so going forward, every video, yes, you don't want to miss out, because all these videos that I'll be sharing with you, yes, will not help you to only pass your exam and pass it very well, but also these videos will help you so that you become an outstanding health professional in whichever field that you find yourself. So my friends, tell a friend to tell another friend, anyone who is not enjoying all these important videos, inform the person, so that at the end of the day we produce outstanding health professionals for our country and beyond. And so without much ado, let's set the ball rolling. This discussion, at the senior high school, at the junior high school, you have a lot of information regarding the skeletal system. One simple thing that we are aware is that when you look at the skeletal system, it is not only made up of bones. Alongside the bones, we have what we call the cartilages. So generally, when we say skeletal tissue, then we are not only interested in what we call the osseous tissue. Whenever we say osseous tissue, then we are talking about the bone tissue, but we are also interested in what we call the cartilage. So it means that if you look at the skeletal system, we are not only studying osteology, and whenever we say osteology, that's the study of bones, but we also study cartilages. So that is what I want to first put inside you. If you've seen that, then you learnt about some roles that the skeletal system will play for humans. For instance, one of the things that we learned is that we know that it's forming the framework of the body. Not only that, what we also know is that importantly, if you look at this articulated skeleton I have over here, you know that internally there will be important organs around. It means that another function of the skeletal system, what it's going to do is that it's going to be self-protective function, importantly protecting internal delicate organs from mechanical injury. So sometimes someone may be involved in some kind of automobile accident. Mainly if you look at those organs which dwell in what we call the abdominal region. Usually they tend to suffer most of the injuries in case the impact gets to that area. Such areas such as the skull, or let's say the head region, talking about the thoracic region, talking about the pelvic region, because of that kind of bones, or because of that kind of skeletal tissue around, what we find is that the injury tends to be a bit minimal, so to speak. These are some of the things that the skeletal system is doing. Not only that, now we know that the skeleton, we say, is the hard part. That kind of definition was given to you. It says the hard part of an organism's body, in this case an animal's body. That's what we are talking about. So if the hard part, but my friends, always I tell students that it is not the hardest, because we know that the hardest substance that we have in the human body, is found in the tooth, and it is of course your enamel. It's to be followed by what we call dentin, it's a cell part of the tooth, then to be followed by what we call cementum, or what we used to call cement. It's still part of the tooth. Before we even come to the bone, even the bone, we have an area where it's very hard, which we call the petrous part of the tongue. The name is petrous, so it resembles something like Peter. Jesus said that upon this rock, which is the Peter, which is Peter, that I'll build, my church. So these are the things, before we get to some other bones. So the bone is not or the skeleton is not the hardest, is that one of the hard or hardest substance that we have in the body. Okay, so that is one thing. So they are going to serve protective function. Now, one thing that I want you to know is that how come that we see that bones are hard? Why? Because this kind of skeleton, by way of mainly talking about the bones, they will be relevant in mineral homeostasis. Okay, minerals. When I talk about minerals, I'm talking about calcium, I'm talking about phosphorus, okay, potassium, and what have you. So homeostasis, very important. So for instance, storage of calcium, storage of phosphates, okay, will be very relevant as far as the bone is concerned. For instance, which is part of the skeletal tissue. Now, whenever I say this, then one thing I want you to know for now, okay, which before I'll go to the important things, it's just an introductory, but just trying to, get the pace, right for me. Okay, when you look at, what we call the bone, okay, one thing is that we have what we call the organic matrix. Okay, so apart from having the cells, which I will tell you that these cells, we will call them what we call, we have several cells of the bone, series. Okay, we have what we call osteoprogenitor cells, osteoprogenitor cells. In other words, these serve more or less like stem cells, upon which we get some other cells, we call them osteoblasts. Okay, now anytime you hear the word or you see the suffix blasts, then it has to do with what we call forming. So any blast cell, so to speak, will be relevant in forming what we call the matrix. Okay, we tell you all these things. Now I told you that apart from the bone cells, we have the organic component. Whenever we talk about matrix, we are talking about that component of the bone or that entity outside the cells. So precisely, we will call it extracellular matrix, outside the cell. Okay, that is what we will be talking about. Okay, and then of course, we eventually, once they, these cells, okay, they make that kind of extracellular matrix, okay, by way of these blast cells. So in this case, osteoblasts making the extracellular matrix, they will get entrapped, okay, in their own matrix that they made. Once they get entrapped over there, then what will happen is that they will maintain the matrix that they produced. If you are a cell and you are mature enough, you've made the matrix, then you get entrapped within it, then your surface becomes site. Okay, CYTE, site. It means that you are a mature, cell. So in this case, we call the cell osteocyte. We'll be going through all these things, but this is just a quick recap, something that I want to give you before I move in there. Then beyond that, we will also be going to what we call some other lineage will come in, which will be coming out from the bone marrow, from the red bone marrow, by way of the monocytes. Once they leave, okay. So one thing is that you learnt about these kind of blast cells, where there was this famous mnemonic like never let monkeys eat banana. Yes, and you know that a never, where is the N, represent the neutrophils. Okay, then of course let L for lymphocyte. Okay, monkeys, that is, monkeys is monocyte. Okay, and eat is for, of course, eosinophils. Okay, and of course, whenever we talk about banana, then we are talking about basophils. That is the order of decreasing, concentration in, the peripheral blood. Okay, that's what we see over there. So it means that by and large, we want to see that when I take your blood, okay, when I run through it, if I do what we call the full blood count, okay, if I look at the analysis of it, then what I would expect to see is that the predominant cell type, which I should find over there in terms of, numerical value, okay, of course, and also in terms of percentage, I should see more of course, the neutrophils, okay, and the least found should be, that kind of basophils. But that one too, there's a catch somewhere, because at the end of the day, if the person that you are looking at, if it's, let's say, less than 15 years, then we expect that lymphocyte will rather be the most predominant cell type that we have, followed by, of course, neutrophil. These are some exceptions somewhere. Okay, we'll come to all these important things. So that is, one thing that I want you to be aware of, that the bone, okay, will have what we call organic component, and it also have what we call the inorganic matrix. The inorganic component, okay, that is the one I'm talking about, by way of the calcium, the phosphate. There's one term that which we often talk about when we are talking about the mineral component or the inorganic component of the bone matrix. and that is, I mean, something we call, I mean, calcium hydroxyapatite. Okay, you might have heard about this one. Okay, that is an important bit that you should be aware of. Now, when you talk about the bone, you know, sometimes you see that people suffer from something we call osteomalacia. Okay, osteomalacia. Now, whenever we talk about osteomalacia, it is synonymous with rickets. I'm sure at the senior high school we learned about rickets, junior high school we learned about rickets. When we say rickets, that kind of bow leg that we are talking about. And whenever, because of that weakening, that softening, okay, in children we say rickets. You know, one important vitamin which, if there's deficiency over there, it leads to that one. And you know that vitamin is, of course, vitamin D, because you know that vitamin D, the active vitamin D, by way of, you know, I mean, calcitriol, is supposed to help absorb, you know, vitamin D from your diet. Okay, so that is one thing. That is why we say it leads to rickets. Now, in adults, we don't call it rickets. The same pathology, we call it osteomalacia, softening of the bone. Okay, now if I've mentioned this, then I have to be quick and also tell you that if you are having mineral matrix, you also have organic matrix, and the organic matrix is the protein matrix. And when we talk about protein matrix, it provides that kind of platform upon which the organic matrix, by way of the minerals, okay, will be, of course, added or be deposited. Okay, it means that if you have deficiency with the protein too, okay, by way of the collagenous fibers, then what will happen is that you will rather suffer from something we call osteoporosis, something which is very common, you know, in post-menopausal women. Okay, yes, so easily their bones, because the density becomes lighter, can easily get fractured. Okay, so these are the things that I want you to know. So another function of the bone is storage of minerals. Yes, not only that, one other thing too that you have to be aware is that we are not only storing minerals, but if I cut through this bone, you always take some kind of meat. At least you've taken, I mean, at least the chicken, and you get to know that, you know, sometimes if you get this kind of bone, okay, you chew it and you feel some kind of thing in there inside the bone. I'll be explaining all these things. That is something we call the bone marrow. Yes, it's called the bone marrow. Now, this bone marrow that we are talking about, what happened is that when you were young, okay, fetal stage, I mean, young child, yes, then most we expect that entirely, most of that thing that we are talking about, the bone marrow, is actually relevant for production of blood cells. So, production of blood cells, not only red blood cells, white blood cells, your platelets will be produced by that thing that you always enjoy when you take the chicken. And that thing is what we call the red bone marrow. Red bone marrow. And so one other function of the bone, and for that matter the skeletal system, is that it will be relevant for production of what we call, I mean, the red blood cells generally, and that is something we call hematopoiesis or simply hemopoiesis. Okay, that is what is going to happen. Now, as you age, what will happen is that the thickness, which of course we are saying that inside, yes, is occupied by this, I mean, red bone marrow, yes, will be replaced by something we call yellow bone marrow. And yellow bone marrow is relevant in storage of fat. So another function of the bone, and for that matter the skeletal system, will be storage of fat. Okay, and that is what we call adipocytes. Okay, that is one thing. Now, not only that, when you look at this bone, what will happen is that I'll be showing you a lot of things. Okay, just, I mean, pay attention to these things, and I'll be showing some important details that you need to know. When you look at these bones, what they do is that they provide, most of these bones that we have over here, they provide surfaces for muscle attachment. Okay, so tendons of muscles will have to insert or will have to originate from some of these areas. But one thing that I want you to be aware is that it's not only, you know, tendons of muscles, but also ligaments. Okay, will have to attach. Okay, importantly, whenever you have a joint, ligaments, you know, they tend to help in the stability of these joints. Very important. And whenever they provide surfaces for these muscles to attach, one thing is that whenever muscles contract and relax, I'll be showing you all these things, they cause movement. You get what I'm trying to say? So the muscles which will be associated with these muscles, with these bones, when they contract, they cause movement. And the movement they cause, yes, that movement, for that movement to be complete, okay, to happen, then what will happen is that there are joints. We'll be explaining all these joints to you. There are joints around. Generally, the purpose of joints is to allow that whenever muscles contract and relax, movement should happen. So if the joint is unable to allow, then no movement will happen. That's another thing. So it means that sometimes they tell you that, bones and for that matter skeletals, they help in movement. The movement they help is that they provide surfaces for muscles to attach. And for that matter, whenever the muscles contract and relax, movement is evident. Why? Because the joint, which in this case will be movable joint, which later we'll get to know that they will be, diarthrosis. Okay, some of them will be slightly movable, that will be amphiarthrotic. Yes, in any case, some will be immovable. Later we get to know that they will be synarthrotic. We explain all those things for you. But generally, the purpose of joint is that they should permit movement whenever muscles contract and relax. Okay, so that's also one other thing. Yes, your shape. If you are a female, your equal color shape that you have. Okay, yes, it's because of the kind of muscle that you have. So the kind of bones that you are having. Okay, important that these are things. Now, not only that, okay, now sometimes we are not only talking about the bones, we also talk about cartilages, because it's also part of the skeletal tissue. Okay, now if you look at your airway, you're able to breathe, because you have some kind of, you have this kind of windpipe, and this windpipe is reinforced anterolaterally. Yes, posteriorly we don't have it at the posterior aspect, that's behind. Anterolaterally by these kind of, sometimes we say about 16 to 20 of these guys. We call them C-shaped cartilages. They are hyaline cartilage. We come to all these things. Once you are having this, then you know that we are looking at also helping you with your airway and what have your breathing movement. Okay, so these are important things that I want you to know. Okay, yes, these are some of the things that this kind of skeletal system is going to play. We will look at other things as we move on. For instance, if you look at my nose, okay, this is my nose. I have the nasal septum. The nasal septum over there is separating the left and right nasal cavities. Okay, yes, all these things. Okay, reinforcing over there. There will be a cartilage over there. Not only do we have the bones over there, there will be a cartilage over there. If I look at my ear, I have ossicles, bones over there, helping me to transmit, to amplify, the sound that will be collected by the pinna of the ear. Okay, all these things. For example, if I look at my orbit, if I look at my eye, it is, they are housed in what we call the orbit, the orbital cavity, which, yes, this kind of cavity is formed by bones. Okay, so all these things are very important. Look at my teeth. My teeth are able to, they are housed, okay, in there, okay, because we have what we call alveolar processes in what we call the maxilla, okay, the upper jawbone, and then the mandible, the lower jawbone. I'm able to chew, okay, because of mainly this mandible, which of course several important muscles, about 4 muscles, we call them masticatory muscles, have to attach. Okay, these are important things. Yes, I'm able to talk, I'm able to have that kind of facial expression, express myself to you as I speak. Why? Because all these muscles are attaching up somewhere, they are facial expression muscles. Okay, without the skeletal system, they wouldn't have, had any place to be. So these are important things that I want you to know. As we move on, yes, we'll be talking about other things. So this is just by way of trying to let you know how useful the skeletal system is, and for that matter, your bones and then your cartilages, are. Now, if you've seen the skeletal system, then one thing that I want you to know is that generally we are told that we have 126 bones in the human 206 bones in the human body. Yes, that's what we are told. But by the end of this class, I'll let you know that in the adults, you may have individuals who are having more than the 206 bones. Yes, it's true. We'll be explaining all these things to you. Now, just to give you a quick understanding, what we should know is that if you look at the bones of the skeletal system, we have what you call the bones of the axial skeleton. And whenever we say axial skeleton, it's like find yourself in the longitudinal axis vertically of the body. So because it's in the axis, longitudinal axis, that's why I call it axial skeleton. Now this first division, we also have another division, and that is what we call appendicular skeleton. Now whenever we talk about appendicular skeleton, we are talking about bones of the limbs. Bones of the limbs. Now whenever I talk about bones of the limbs, during our first meeting, I explained to you what these limbs are. For humans, because we are not we are not quadrupeds, so to speak. We don't walk with 4 limbs. Okay, we just walk with that of our lower limb. What happens is that we have what we call upper limb and lower limb, unlike what we find in other quadrupeds, where because they walk with all the 4 limbs, they will have what we call forelimb and of course hind limb. And we explained all these things for you. So what we are saying is that whenever we talk about bones of what we call the appendicular skeleton, we are talking about bones of the limbs, bones of upper limb and bones of the lower limb. That's what you should know. Yes. So now when we talk about bones of the axial skeleton, we are told that we have 80. Yes. So whenever you are asked this question, how many bones do we have for the axial skeleton? Your answer is that we have 80 bones. Now how about the appendicular skeleton? That is 126 bones. Yes, that is what we are going to see. Now, if you look at bones of the axial skeleton, what you should know is that we have, the skull. The first one, we have the skull. Now, when you look at the skull generally, yes, we are told that it consists of 22 bones. Yes, 22 bones of the skull. Now, out of those 22 bones of the skull, we are saying that we have those ones which form the cranium. Okay, so all this way, that will be the cranium. So we have what we call cranial bones. Now, these cranial bones, we have 8 of them. Now, one unique thing that we know about these bones, these cranial bones, is that I want you to know is that generally they are unpaired. Generally, cranial bones generally are unpaired, except 2, which will be paired. Okay, so that is the first thing I want you to be aware of. Generally, we say that the cranial bones, they are unpaired. They are not paired. And when we talk about the unpaired ones, one of them is here. This is called frontal bone. Now, my friends, these ones, I've done detailed videos of them. Okay, so if you can get those videos and watch it. But today, I'm just trying to give you real, understanding regarding these things. Okay, you really become, a guru in this area if you pay really attention to some of these things. So this is the frontal bone. It's just one. If I turn it to the opposite side, yes, usually we call this area your occiput, and that is why the bone over there we call the occipital bone. The occipital bone is here. Now we have other unpaired bones. Okay, the other unpaired bones, we can appreciate them this way. Now, if you look at what I'm showing you over here, there is a small bone, as if you can see there's a small bone over here where my yellow thing is running, yes, where I can see something which is like the cresta of the cock. We call it cresta galli. This bone over here, we call it the ethmoid bone. This is just a tip of the iceberg. We have some of them to project in the nasal cavity by way of some of the conchi. Okay, so you see some, ear-like, structures, processes extending the, nasal cavity. The one below, okay, is a separate bone on its own. Okay, so that is what we see. We have what we call superior, and of course the middle nasal conchi. Sometimes we even have supreme nasal conchi, which are part of this bone, which we are calling the ethmoid bone. Ethmoid bone. Okay, it's a weak bone, ethmoid bone. Then apart from the ethmoid bone, when I come, okay, so ethmoid bone, let me say ethmoid bone. Now look at how we identify the ethmoid. This is the nasal. I have some bones over the nasal. This one is the frontal bone in front. So ethmoid bone is more anterior. Then the next bone, which is just next to it, okay, this bone, we call it, the sphenoid bone. Sphenoid bone. Okay. So for now, I've told you that if you look at the cranial bones, I said that generally they are unpaired. They are single bones, except two of them. We've seen the frontal bone is unpaired. We've seen the occipital bone is unpaired. We've seen the ethmoid bone, where it's unpaired. We've also seen the sphenoid bone is also unpaired. Now, how about the two paired ones? The two paired ones are these guys. Okay. Now, yes. So if you look at this, okay, I have another bone over here. Now, this is the front part. I have the frontal bone, and immediately once I go behind the frontal bone, I see these two bones. They are paired. Why am I saying they are paired? Can you see there is a line? There's a structure separating them. That is what we call suture. You learned at the senior high school that the bones of the skull, they are joined, okay, by some immovable joints, which you call them sutures. It's a type of fibrous joint. You see these things. Okay, so this is what we call the suture. And because it's found between the two parietal bones, we call it interparietal suture. But my friends, later we get to know that this one, because it's also running in the mid-sagittal plane, which is also called the median plane, this suture is also called the sagittal suture. Okay, that is what we see. These are the parietal bones. Now, why are we calling it parietal bones? Now, mainly what is housed in the cranial cavity, or in the head, we have the brain. Okay, so forming important wall, okay, by way of superior and lateral component of the wall of what we call the cranial cavity, we have these bones. And anything we talk about wall, last time when I explained the visceral, when I explained serous membranes to you, I told we have serous, which has to do with the visceral organ, and then we also have what we call the parietal. And whenever you hear the word parietal, it has to do with wall. Okay, forming an important wall of the cranial cavity. Very important. So these are the parietal bones, they are paired. Apart from that, if I just move down, okay, I see another bone over here, which will be very important in keeping some, something like external, acoustic meatus. Even the internal acoustic meatus also, be running through it. Can you see a small foramen over there? And whenever we say foramen, it's like an opening in there. Okay, you cannot appreciate it now. There's a small opening in here, and we call it internal, acoustic meatus. Very important. Okay, so that is, one thing we see. Once you have this bone, which is around just where the ears are, those bones, we call them temporal bones. Temporal. Okay, temporal bones. And whenever we're talking about temporal bones, okay, the word temple has to do with time. So if you've seen some old men and perhaps some old women, you see that they tend to, start, graying. The gray hair tends to, begin, around this area. So the word time. So in other words, as time elapses, we tend to see, gray hair appearing. That is why the bone around this area, we are calling it, temporal, bones. Okay, that's another thing. So you see that we have the the cranial bones being unpaired except two. You've seen that. And then you go to what we call the facial bones. Facial bones. Now, for facial bones, one thing you should know is that almost all of them are paired. Yes. Facial bones, almost all of them are paired except two. So the two exceptions will be unpaired ones. Okay, so talking about the facial bones, then what can we see? Now, you can feel this bone I have here. These are called zygomatic bones. Okay, zygomatic. No, you can see that there's one on the right side, there's also one on the left side. Zygomatic bones. And then, apart from that, you also see there will be another bone. There will be two bones over here where the bridges of your pedicles, if you wear some, they will rest. Okay, these are known as nasal bones. Now, how do I know there are two? There are two because there's a suture. Okay, there's one on the right side, there's one on the left side. Okay, that is what we call the nasal bones. Now, if I've mentioned nasal bones, then let me be quick and tell you something. That, sometimes you cry. Okay, you cry and then tears will be, coming out. Where is that gland that secretes, these tears is coming from? We call that gland lacrimal gland. Now, it's actually also located in this orbit, but look at this area. It's located in the supralateral aspect of the orbit. Supralateral, so this way, inside the orbit. But when you cry, most of it you see it coming to the medial aspect. Now, the bone over here, medial aspect, okay, we call it lacrimal bone. Lacrimal bone. So we have the lacrimal bone, where my blue marker, has highlighted. Lacrimal bone. Why? Because this lacrimal bone will bear a sac, okay, which we call lacrimal sac. Because this guy, which is the lacrimal bone, presents the depression, which we call lacrimal fossa, and the sac will dwell in there so that the tears, okay, will have to run in there, be collected over there. Eventually, it will get through, to the nasal cavity through a term we call nasal lacrimal duct. The word is nasal lacrimal, so that connection. That is why sometimes you'll be crying, and then of course your nose will be running as well. That's the link. We'll be looking at all these things. So that's also paired, the lacrimal bones. Now, apart from that, you also see this guy over here, where you have the upper, teeth. This bone is what we call the maxilla. Now, if you look at the maxilla, they're actually paired. So we have one on the right side, we have one on the left side. Now, to really show you that, you can see from here that there's a suture, intermaxillary suture over here, separating the left and right maxillae. Okay, so that is, one thing that you should be aware of. So we've seen the next bone, which is also, paired. That is the maxillae. Now, apart from looking at the maxillae, then one thing is that if you look at the nasal cavity, inside the nasal cavity over here, you see some, I told you about the ear lichens, the one which is at the lowermost level, okay? So I can see, that structure, one here and one here. At the lowermost level, those structures, okay, we call them what we call inferior nasal conchae. Inferior nasal conchae. Now, in the living, they will be covered by something we call mucous membrane. So that what they are going to do is to fuel the air. They cause turbulence in the air. So that there will be large area, surface area for that kind of, perception of the smell, okay, and also for air conditioning. We'll be seeing all these things. That is what we call, the inferior nasal conchae. Remember that whenever we talk about superior nasal conchae, middle nasal conchae, and if present, supreme nasal conchae, they will be part of what we call the ethmoid bone, which you saw to be part of what we call the the cranial bones. Remember, let me just be quick and tell you that for the facial bones, we have 14 of them. Yes, we have 14 of them. And already we've seen, 2 zygomatic bones, we've seen 2 lacrimal bones, we've seen 2 nasal bones. Okay, so we've seen 2 zygomatic bones. Okay, they are here. We've seen 2 nasal bones. We've seen 2 lacrimal bones. Okay, we've seen 2 maxillae. We've seen 2 inferior nasal conchae. So in all, okay, so in all, how many have we had so far? Okay, that will be 10. So how about the next 4? Now, one thing that I want you to be aware, okay, is that there will be another bone. Now, if you look at the maxilla, okay, this is the maxilla. Now, this area we call it the palate. If you look at the maxilla, the posterior extent, if I run my finger as I come posterior, there's another bone over here, which contributes to the formation of the hard palate. This guy over here is known as the palatine bone. Now, the palatine bone, they are also paired. We have one on what we call the right side, and we have one on the left side, the palatine bones. Okay, so we have what we call the palatine bones. At the rear aspect of the palate, we have the palatine bones. And what these palatine bones, okay, are doing is that they are joining, okay, the 2 maxillary bones, so that they form what we call the hard palate. Okay, we see that. Now, then it's left with the unpaired ones, which are part of the facial bones. Now, the unpaired ones, one of them that you can see over here. Now, if you look at the nasal cavity, in the midline, you can see there's a structure running through the midline. Now, the uppermost is something we call perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. It's still part of the ethmoid. The guy that we showed over here is still part of it. Perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. It forms part of the nasal septum. And then apart from that, the one I want to show you is the one below over here. And this guy is known as the vomer. Vomer, V-O-M-E-R, vomer. It's a solitary bone in the midline, vomer. And the vomer and the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid, reinforced by something called the septal cartilage in the living, will form something called the nasal septum. Nasal septum. Now, sometimes you may see, if you look at someone's nasal cavity, you may see that perhaps the right one or the left one may be larger than the other, and you may see the nasal septum deviated to one side. That's something called deviated nasal septum. It's common, among people around, and because mainly of something called overgrowth, okay, of either the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid or the vomer. So there may be overgrowth instead of meeting this way and then forming, but because one is growing, okay, more than the other, that differential growth will result in deviated nasal septum, either to the left or to the right, okay, impeding, inhalation or exhalation to that particular part that is, has become, narrow. Okay, so that is, that one. Now, how about the last unpaired bone of the facial bone? And that is this guy, which we are calling the mandible. The mandible. Okay? This is the mandible. And the mandible will also bear this kind of teeth. Okay, that is the mandible. Alright. So these are the bones, okay, of the skull. Now, if I still look at the skull region, I see that I have the ear. Now, the ear, you are aware that in the middle ear, we have some bones, we call them ossicles. Ear ossicles. There are actually 3, which, you have this mnemonic, the Miss bones or the Has bones. Miss, M-I-S, M for malleus, I for incus, S for stapes or stapes. Okay, that is also, part of it. So we have 3 to, of course, the right ear, and then 3 to the left ear. Okay, that is the ear ossicles. Now, in this class only, I will tell you something which you call lenticular process of what you call inquis. Okay, which some people believe that it should be the fourth ear ossicle. You also see that one. I'll be explaining something to you. Okay, so that is that one. Now, apart from that, when I come down, there's a bone over here, which one of the muscles of the tongue, extrinsic muscles of the tongue, were attached to by way of the hyoid muscle. Okay, that bone is the only bone, it's a unique bone. It's the only bone in the human body which does not articulate with any other bone. Whenever we say articulations, we are talking about joints, which you can also call arthrosis. That is why if there's inflammation to a joint, we call it arthritis. Okay, now if you look at this guy over here, there's a bone over here. This bone at the base of the tongue, we are calling it the hyoid bone, Hyoid, hyoid bone. Okay, it's the only bone that we have over there which does not form joints with any other bone. We'll be explaining joints to you. Now, whenever we say joints, we are talking about the situation where 2 or 3 bones, meet. In other words, this bone is not meeting with any other, bone, any other joint. Okay, that is one thing. Now, this mandible, let me tell you something about this mandible. This mandible too is not forming suture with any other bone in there, highly movable. Okay, that is one thing. Other than other, bones in there which, are joined via sutures, and these sutures, we say they are immovable. This joint is very movable. Okay, helping you to chew and all that. Okay, that is one thing you should know. Now, this bone has forensic merit. Okay, anytime I told you that one important muscle by way of the hyoglossus, okay, is attached to it. Hyoglossus will ensure that, you cause depression of your tongue, bringing your tongue, okay, or let me call it retraction and depression, so that your tongue will not come out. Now, what we see is that there will be another muscle, which we call it the genioglossus, which will help you in protraction of the tongue so that you don't deglute. In other words, don't swallow your own tongue. Now, if you have a situation that if this bone, which I'm talking about one muscle which we call hyoglossus, is attached to, which is supposed to prevent your tongue from coming out, okay, is fractured, then what will happen is that the muscle action of that bone will be impaired. And so the antagonistic muscle, which is the genioglossus, is the one who is going to work, and therefore your tongue will come out. That is why forensically this bone has merit. So if someone is dead and we suspect a case of strangulation, either through hanging or someone, pressing the neck area to cause this bone to get fractured, then what will happen is that we should see that the tongue, okay, should come out of the oral cavity. Like this way. If you've seen someone who has hanged himself or herself before, you see that the tongue is out of the cranial cavity, because the muscle who is supposed to cause it to be in there by way of hyoglossus, okay, is impaired. Why? Because its point of attachment has been broken or is fractured. Okay, that is an important thing you should know. So all these kind of anatomy we are learning, we are not learning them for rot learning, just learning them. Let me quickly learn something and go. No, you are learning them so that you apply it to the clinical setting. You apply it to the medical case. These are the things we are doing. All right. So there's a single bone we call a hyoid bone. Hyoid bone. Then once I move away from that, then I can see that there's one bone over here, who is also in the midline. We call the sternum. Sternum. Usually the lay person will call sternum the breastbone. The breastbone. That is one thing that we call the sternum, the breastbone. Okay, you will see that one. Although we know that we have 3 separate bones, but by age 40, all of them should get fully fused. Okay, so that we don't have any separation over there. Okay, that is, one thing we should know. Okay, we have mandible, we have body of the sternum, or the gladiolus portion, or the sternum, we see them. We have xiphoid process or the xiphoid, but by and large, you consider all these things to be a single bone. So one sternum, Put that point down. Now, then apart from that, there are some bones, okay, which we find them over here. So if you look at, your neighbor's back, you can appreciate it, you can feel it over there, you can palpate all these guys over there. These bones, we call them bones of the vertebral column. Now, normally, okay, individually, we have 33 of these bones. 33 of these bones. But at the end of the day, those bones in the caudal region, okay, the inferior region, they tend to fuse. Okay, that is what we see. That's the principle. The bones in the caudal region, they tend to fuse. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, we sit over this way. The stress is so much. If they are separate, okay, it might not really help, in weight bearing so much. If they are separate, okay. Then, of course, apart from that, they may also, not be, strong enough to accommodate, okay, that kind of stress that come with, sitting down for quite a long time, standing for quite a long time. Yes. Okay, that is one thing we should know. Now, so those in the neck region. Now, last time I told you that anything that is in the neck region, we use the word, or anything related to the neck of something, we use the word cervix. And that is why the adjective that we use for these bones, because individually each of these bones will be called vertebra. Okay, we will call them vertebrae. So there are 7 of them. So in anatomy this way, now all these guys are going to serve important landmarks which we are going to use. So sometimes we want to be quick with the way we nomenclate them. So we sort of say the cervical vertebra number 1, number 2. The word, simply we use the symbol C1. So whenever I say C1, then I'm talking about the first cervical vertebra. And the first cervical vertebra, there's something unique about it. It's like the atlas holding your skull, which is serving as your atlas. So this bone, we call it atlas. Okay, we have explained all these things. Then the next one, we call it the, axis. Now I always tell students, sometimes some students get confused with atlas and axis. Okay, but just remember, atlas holding something. Okay, that's C1, and axis is C2. But sometimes too, you know that T comes before X. If you are talking about letters of the English alphabet, T, so atlas will come, that's C1, before axis, AX. Okay, so C1 all the way to C7. And C7 is very important. So C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, C7. Very important landmark. Because that one, if someone flexes the neck, okay, then what will happen is that this one becomes very palpable at the posterior aspect. The spine will be very palpable over there. We will go through all these important details for you. That is why we call this vertebra the vertebra prominence. That's C7. And then from there, we go to those in the thoracic region. And those in the thoracic region, we have T1 all the way to T12. Yes. One unique thing we know about the bones, okay, in the thoracic region, by all the vertebrae, is that they have to articulate with their ribs. Because you know that the ribs are also in the thoracic region. Okay, that is why they will be presenting with some kind of things, we call them, facets, okay, costal facets, which the rib will have to attach. So the rib, yes, later we get to know that to not only attach to the body, but also to the triangular space of these kind of things we are talking about. We explain all these things, all these vertebrae. Then those bones which are in the loin region, okay, we use the word lumbar, L-U-M-B-A-R, lumbar vertebrae. There are 5 of them. Okay, and then from there we go to that in what we call the coccyx. That in the coccyx. Now, there's the coccyx. That, although there's part of what we call the last lumbar. So this one I'll call it L5, the last lumbar vertebra, L5. Now this one is coccyx. Sorry, sacrum. Sacrum. That is S-A-C-R-U-M. Sacrum. So this sacrum that you have over here, it consists of 5 bones individually. But then they get fused. So we consider this whole sacrum, which consists of 5 fused sacral vertebrae, as a single bone. and then beyond that I can see one of them. So we say we could be using S1, S2, S3 up to S5. Now if it's the coccyx, which some people will call the tailbone, okay, consists of what we call individual. Normally we expect to see 4 of them, 4 bones fused together. Okay, that is one thing that we find. The unique thing about this kind of sacrum and the coccyx is that, unlike the other bones that we find over here, now if you take a closer look, you see that the bones will be separated by some kind of disc. They are in between the vertebrae, so we use the word intervertebral disc. Okay, they are fibrocartilage. Later we understand these things. Okay, intervertebral disc. This one doesn't have it. The same way C1 and C2 will not have it, because they form some kind of pivot joint, okay, to help in that kind of rotation, okay, around. Okay, so that is, one thing that we should be aware. Now, for this reason, you understand why human beings do not have tail, because bones of our coccyx is just made up of just 4 bones which get fused. Now I know that for rabbits normally we have 16 bones over there. So in other words, the longer the tail of an animal, the greater the number of coccygeal vertebrae over there. Okay, that is one useful thing you should know of. Now the last bit of what we call the axial skeleton, they are these bones that we find over here. These are what we call the ribs. And whenever we look at the ribs can also be called costal bones, C-O-S-T-A-L, costal bones. And usually you see that from rib number 1 all the way to rib number 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now all these details, we explain all of them, okay? Get the videos, they are there, watch them. Now up to the 7th one, they are all articulated via some kind of cartilage, we call them ossicles, to what we call the sternum. Either the mandible or the body of the sternum. When you have such a rib, then we call you, true rib. True rib. Yes. And you are true rib. We explain that true ribs will also be called vertebral, costal or vertebral sternal ribs. We explain this kind of nomenclature for you. And then we also have now from number 7, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. From number 7, okay, you can see here. From number 7, number 8, number 9, you see they also have costal cartilages. But the only thing is that they are not directly articulating with the sternum. They are doing so by an indirect connection by attaching to the costal cartilage of the 7th rib. That is why these ribs, okay, we call them vertebral chondral, because they are attaching to the costal cartilage. Anything chondral has no cartilage, so we call them vertebral chondral ribs. Part of, sometimes we can describe them as false rib. And then you can see these 2 other ribs over here. That is rib number 11 and rib number 12. Now, right now, you don't see any cartilage, flange, you don't see any cartilage. But interestingly, in the living, we have cartilage, very short cartilages over there. Just that their cartilages do not extend all the way to this anterior aspect to attach to, the sternum, either directly or indirectly. That is why we call them floating ribs. But because they are attached to only the, thoracic vertebrae, we call them vertebral ribs. Okay, we understand all these things that we're talking about. So for the bones of vertebral column, they're actually individual territory, but I said the coccyx, the bones, the coccygeal vertebrae, okay, which are 4, they will all fuse together to form a single bone. That of the sacrum, which are actually 5, they will fuse together to form a single sacrum. So at the end of the day, we have what we call 26 bones of the vertebral column. And then the ribs, we have 12 on either side, 12 on either side. Okay, now if you read the Bible, it tell you that God used one of the ribs to create of man, that is Adam, to create Eve, that's the woman. So just one of this one was used. Okay, that is what we find. Now, having seen that, then we also have that of appendicular skeleton. Now, whenever we talk about appendicular skeleton, then you think of bones of the limbs. That's what I've told you already. And so, just by looking at this one, whenever we talk about bones of the limbs, we're talking about upper limb and lower limb. but there should be a way of connecting them to the axial skeleton, and that is why we need something we call girdles. Girdles, girdles. So that if they are bones of the upper limb, they will be connected to the axial skeleton via something we call pectoral girdle or the shoulder girdle. And the bones of the lower limb, they will be connected via something we call pelvic girdle. Now look at something. So if you look at bones of what we call the upper limb, then let us see. You have what we call a single bone over here in the arm. That is what we call humerus. Okay, so there's the humerus, bone of the arm. That's the humerus. Then we also have, so that we have one on either side. Okay, they are bilateral. And then we go to that of the forearm. Now if you look at the forearm, there are two bones over there. One orients laterally. Okay, one orients laterally, and it is actually the shorter one, lateral and shorter one. We call it radius. Now, how do I know that I'm looking at the radius? For you to know you are looking at the radius, now if you take a look at this bone, this is the radius. Because when I look at this area, which will be coming to pretty soon, it is having a circular outline. It's like we are having the car tie. Okay, and this guy, okay, because having a circular outline, and I can determine the radius of this figure. That's why we call it radius. Okay, radius. They are also, paired. Then the other one is ulnar. The ulnar is the longer one, and it is medially placed. So in the anatomical position, the ulnar is more closer to the midline of the body. Okay, this is the ulnar. Now, one simple trick that you can see that is the ulnar. Ulnar is U-L-N-A. So just by looking at this area, you can see that this one is like giving you a U-shaped, structure, and that is why we are calling it ulnar. This is the ulnar. Okay. So one on either side. Then the next one is to look at the bones of the wrist bones of the wrist. Okay, bones of the wrist. So the bones of the wrist, okay, one thing I want you to be aware is that there are 8. There are 8 bones of the wrist. So on either side, 8 bones of the wrist. There's a famous mnemonic that you are aware of. You have the proximal root bones, and you have the distal root bones of the carpals, bones of the wrist. And your mnemonic is that some labbers take positions that they can't handle. And this mnemonic applies, that is from proximal to distal, and we also always move from lateral to medial. Now, whenever you talk about lateral, then you start with where your thumb is in the anatomical position, where your palms, face forward. So it means that we are going to have what we call scaphoid, the bone. We have scaphoid, that's the sum, proximal. L for lunate labes, T for trapezium, and then we also have what do you call it? P for pisiform. That's trapezium. That is trapezoid. Canthus capite, that's the largest carpal bone. Handle, that's habit, and habit will be having a hook. Okay, over there you'll be seeing them. Okay, that is another thing that you should be aware of. That's the carpal bones, 8 on either side. And then from there we go to what we call the palm. So the bones of the palm, because I'm going beyond the carpus, the carpal bones, then we use the word anything beyond is meta. So metacarpals. And you'll be rightly be aware that your metacarpal, because we are having 5 fingers, the same way metacarpals will also be 5. And we also, number them from where the thumb is. That's the rule. So there's metacarpal 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course 5. That's what we have. Okay, so on either side we having 10. Then we go to what we call the bones of the digates. And I want to look at bones of the digates. we call them phalanges. Just like bones of your toes, we call them phalanges. Phalanges, phalanges. Now these kind of phalanges, you see that with the exception of the thumb, which you can see that is having two bones, one here and one here, having two bones, all the other phalanges will be having 3 bones each. Be having 3 bones. Okay, just do this. Now you can see there's one of the bones, there's another, then there's another. 3 bones each. So it means that we are going to have in all 14 bones of the phalanges. And so on either side, it will become 28 bones. Okay, so these are the things that I want you to be aware of. Now, having seen that, then how about the girdles? The connections, the things which are going to help connect these bones of the upper limb to that of the axial skeleton. And the connection, this is one of those bones. We call it clavicle. Clavicle is the beauty bone. The lay person, okay, may also call it collarbone. Collarbone. Okay, that is what we'll be seeing here. And then we also have one at the back, which we call the scapula or the shoulder blade on either side. Okay, that's what we'll be seeing. These represent what we call the shoulder girdle or the pectoral girdle. Then, having looked at this, the next thing too that we need to look at is to look at bones of the lower limb. Now, bones of the lower limb, your thigh bone, which is the largest, the strongest, the heaviest bone that we have in the human body, this guy, we call it femur. F-E-M-U-R, femur. Over here. We'll be seeing the distinction. Some people confuse it with the humerus. Of course, we know that the humerus will be smaller than the femur. But look at the neck. This quadrangular, more extended neck that we find over here, okay, can help you with some, differentiations. Then, so on either side, we have the thigh bone by way of the femur, and then we also have the tibia in the leg. Just like the forearm, we have 2 bones. This, okay, the lay person will call the shin bone. Yes, the shin bone. And this guy is your tibia. Okay, sometimes people will be playing football, they got to guard this bone so that it doesn't get, injured or something. Okay, and they are guarding this bone. That's why we call it, the guard they use is a shin guard. This is the shin bone, okay, the tibia. And then there's another slender bone over there, a bit twisted. This guy is known as what we call the fibula. Fibula, F-I-B-U-L-A, fibula. This is this guy. So that is, one other thing too that you should be aware of. Now, apart from that, then we have the bones of the tarsals. Just like we had bones of the wrist, the carpals, we have bones of the tarsals. They are the tarsal bones. Now, unlike bones of the carpals, where we say that they are made up of 8 bones, the tarsals, they are made up of 7 bones. Yes, 7 bones. Before I go to the tarsals, you know that before I move out from my thigh to my leg bones, you see that the bone in front of that joint, okay, that knee joint, that is your patella. This is your patella. Okay, this is your patella. Your patella is your kneecap, so we have 2 of them on either side. So the bones of the tarsals, okay, if you look at this is the heel bone. We call it calcaneus, calcaneal bone. And then we have the one on top of the superior bone that we find over here, we call it talus. We learn about all these things, all the ligaments which will be supporting them. Okay? And then if I look at the bone this way, okay, you realize that this is the medial portion, because that's where the great toe will eventually be, and then the lateral portion. Okay, that is one thing we know. Now, we'll be looking at all these things, but if I look at it this way, then the one to the medial aspect, we call this one navicular. Okay, navicular bone. And then once I move out from navicular, then I go proximal. Then what will happen is that I see one bone which is also medial. We call them cuneiforms. This is medial cuneiform, intermediate cuneiform, and the middle cuneiform, and then we have lateral cuneiform. Sometimes we use the word first, second, and third cuneiforms. And then as I come laterally, I have what we call cuboid bone. It's based on their shapes that all these names, came about. So this one we have 7. So on either side, you'll be having what we call 14, tarsal bones. Then with the foot, the remaining portion of the foot, the midfoot, so to speak, what happens is that we have what we call, yes, in the case of the carpals, we said that beyond that we had what we call, metacarpals, which were 5. So beyond the tarsal bones, we have what we call metatarsal bones, which are also going to be 5. Okay, so from medial to, so always we come from where the great toe is. So medial to lateral, we are going to have metatarsal 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is what we're going to see. And then beyond that, we are going to also have the phalanges. And also the same rule apply. Now with the exception of the great toe, which will be made up of only 2 phalanges, the remaining toes will be having 3 phalanges each. That is why the same number will apply. That we are going to have for the lower limb, we are going to have 14 phalanges on each side of the body. Yes, totaling 28. Okay, so that is, one useful thing that I want you to be aware. Okay, so my friends, this time, yes, I gave you that kind of overview for you to understand all these kind of bones. Now, this is just the part 1. Now, the part 2, okay, we are going to explain the blood supply. We are going to learn about ossification. Okay, we are going to learn about, how, these kind of bones. We are going to look at the various types of bones that we have. So I believe that you are going to make a date with me, okay, so that we explain all these useful things for you. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.